Hello, and welcome to What You Gotta Say. My co-host, Eric Dawson, is on hiatus for right now, but we're going to continue on with the same quality without all the arguments. I want to talk to you today. We thought that after the election and the victory by Joe Biden, that it would put an end to the big lie. Boy, were we wrong. I want to talk to you about the big lies that's going through America today. But first, I want to talk to you about the political machine. Now, they were talking about part of the big lie is the voter fraud, voter fixing. But there's a bigger lie going on in politics that has been going on since, well, let's look at the actual Tyler election.
Yep.
And that is the political machine suppressing, oppressing, and eliminating competition so that the people in power can stay in power. With us today, we have former mayor, Mr. Thomas. Your Honor, are you with us?
I'm with you. I'm here.
How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we had you on last time, and we talked about it. You are the first mayor to get police called on you for banking while black.
Yes. When I when I went to our city's bank, asking questions about some funny transactions and seeking to understand, how come we're paying so much in property taxes, but we can't figure out how much money we have. They didn't like those questions, and they contacted the police.
Aren't you an administrator of that account, being the mayor?
I'm an administrator, a signatory, had every right and title to be there. But obviously, the truth of what's really going on was more important to keep secret than to solve the problems that we face.
So you were actually looking to clean up some of the dirt that was swept under the rug, and they decided to stop you?
Even more tragic than that, I was simply trying to pay the bill so we could keep our garbage trucks rolling on the streets. The secret that's hidden with the bank is so deep and so devious that they did not care if trash trucks stopped rolling in the middle of summertime so that, we would have a health crisis on our hands. It was far more important for them to just keep the secret and to create more confusion and chaos than allow a community of color to fix itself and take care of itself.
Let's back that up. What are some of the health implications in garbage not being collected during the hot summer months?
You have all sorts of health crises that build up from the smell, the odor that permeates the air. You have the breakdown of the trash that attracts rats, rodents, all sorts of infestations to occur. And you have people that have issues, be it not being able to breathe properly, or people that could be attacked by the rats seeking to eat the trash. This situation creates a serious health crisis, and it threatens life and safety. However, the bank did not seem to care that we had this safety crisis on our hands, and they wanted to create a distraction to divert attention away from what's really going on with the finances so they could keep their carousel of lies spinning.
Okay, what were you suspecting that was happening with the money?
So I don't want to speculate too much, but what I do know is there are big gaps in material misstatements on our past audits that I was seeking to verify by cross-referencing transactions. I was seeking to verify that, we do not have the funds that we claim to have. And I wanted to follow the money to see where it went and obviously pursue the money so we can get it back so the city can take care of its problems.
Wow. So to distract them, they decided to call the police on the executive, the signer, and the administrator of the city's account.
And you know what happens sometimes when black men encounter law enforcement. Sometimes there are many examples of it not ending well. And thankfully, when law enforcement responded, they recognized my police detail, and they acknowledged that there just seems to be something else at work, but they were not empowered to solve the deeper problem that the city faces. However, we were able to get out of the situation only because there was familiarity in law enforcement.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. So you're the mayor of this city.
Yep.
You have a city paid for law detail.
Yes.
Which basically ensures your safety as your tenure of mayor.
Yes.
And they call the same city police.
We were in a different city. We were in a different city, so it wasn't the same. It was not my police force, but we were in the business branch of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank in White Plains, a different municipality, and
a majority white city.
Mount Vernon. So they knew who I was. They thankfully knew who my security detail was from the police department, and that was the only reason why there wasn't a terrible outcome.
Oh, thank God.
I mean, the outcome was still bad nonetheless, but it still happened.
Yes, I mean, there are not too many places where the mayor, well, except for Atlantic City, New Jersey, where the mayor gets into a fight with other candidates, but there are not too many places where a mayor peacefully investigating runs into problems with a group that you hire that has your money now calling the police on you.
And it gets even more foolish. I mean, I went there with checks that the city wanted to deposit into our own accounts. And these aren't, $10 checks. These are six-figure checks representing significant tax dollars that need to be invested into our community. And the bank also refused to accept checks that require my signature to be on and the deposit. They wouldn't take the deposit either. So it's like, why even be a bank? Why be a branch if you can't even facilitate basic transactions?
Your Honor, why would they be your bank?
Well, that's the question that I asked, and I took action on that, seeking to change the city's bank. However, the other branches of government that I work with refused to take any action. And even to this day, 2 years later, they still will not change banks, and they do not want to take any action whatsoever on addressing the finances. And when you look at, communities of color, you often see them trapped in this chaotic conversation about, oh, we need to get better. We need to create jobs. We need to do the right thing with police and handcuff the police from doing bad things to our people. But they always talk about the problem. They never really pursue the solution. We had the solution. We had all the problems solved. The last problem that we needed to fix was our finances, because that's where you get real independence, and that's where you get freedom, by having command of your money. And obviously, the status quo, the old guard, the real power structure did not want a Black city to have its own independence and to be free from their political strings.
Okay, let's look at the other. Now, for those who are not familiar with Mount Vernon and the city that you have, what are your branches of government? Because I believe you have a triad that's supposed to be working equally.
So Mount Vernon has a strong form of mayoral government where the mayor can, hire and fire very much like a small business. And I do believe Mount Vernon has a great structure of government, but it definitely needs improvement. The other branch of government is the city council, which is a very independently elected city council. So the mayor does not sit on the city council. The mayor is the executive, city council is the legislative. There's a third branch of government in our city that's a city controller, which is also independently elected. So the controller has a seat at the table with the city council and the mayor to create this three-legged stool where you have checks and balances among the three different branches of government. There is a judiciary, but we're going to keep that separate for right now. Those three branches, city council, controller, and mayor, like a three-legged stool, are supposed to stand together. We can disagree, but we're not supposed to take all of our power away because it will make the whole stool fall. That's what happened when I was mayor. Both branches would often take away their power per se to force the city to fail and fall. Either the city council would not fund a position like police commissioner, for example, or the city council would fund a position like, let's say, a city engineer, but then the city controller would not pay the salary. The city controller would not pay the bill. For example, garbage trucks or fuel. Why? It doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense to me. They want to create a distraction. They want to create a diversion. They want to create some kind of chaos because they want to create concern in voters to take the step of voting for a different leader that will be beholden to them, someone where they could pull the strings and make them make decisions that benefit the status quo and preserve the power structure that's there now.
All right. So now the power structure are fighting against the other power structure that wants to do what's fundamentally right for the people. And they're still in office.
Not only are they still in office, they're protected by the power structure. And that's one thing that I've learned about power is that it's not just, Republicans in the right wing trying to oppress voters in the South. It's also, radical left Democrats on the left wing that are also implementing the same tactics that we're hearing about on CNN and other mainstream media sources. So it seems to me that power is the real focus here. And like a bird, the head of the bird determines the way the bird will fly. Will it fly right? Will it fly left? And as long as each wing, be it right or left, is causing people in the middle to look right or look left, they're going to be distracted from what the head is doing. And that's what I believe happened in my community, which is, virtually all Democrats. And there's nothing different than what.
Not only all Democrats, you're majority Black.
Yes. And when you have that constant call for unity and peace, but you still have the parade of problems from violence to drugs to joblessness, it creates hopelessness and despair because, again, taxes are so high. You ask yourself, why are we trapped in this vicious circle when we should be, breaking free from failures of past to create a much better future? It's not a money problem. It's a priority problem. It's a political problem.
The problem is the people that get elected and who are they truly serving? It sounds like they're serving more of these quote unquote corporate investors and partners and other people who have a concern of draining the money out of the city, yet not doing anything to improve the city.
Yeah, I can give an example about the money power that wanted to block a Black city from advancing. We were on the brink of installing a 5G network that the city would own, and we would in turn rent to companies like Verizon, Charter, Amazon, Google, or other startups that want to raise enough capital to rent our 5G fiber network. And for the municipality to do that back in 2017 definitely ruffled a lot of feathers because we were in position to beat the market before it made the market on 5G.
So you were definitely putting your hands in their pocket
to make better services for our businesses and our community. And there are so many different examples of how, money power responds to stop progress. But the key is for people to not become discouraged. The key is for people to know that you have to have leaders willing to sacrifice, willing to step up and take the hits so that the city can advance, even though it may be incremental. Any bit of change is better than none. And I do believe that those leaders that have sacrificed, that have been vilified, and also been proven to be exonerated, definitely deserve not only a chance at redemption, but the community must reconcile that we have to all be in to make the change that we want last. Because if we constantly complain about the problem and talk about how bad it was, we'll never make it better or what it could be. And that's where my focus remains on looking to the future, making sure that the network of people, the network of organizations that are supporting the vision that I have for a better community are there to help fight back against the forces that want to keep Mount Vernon or keep your community down.
So you seem to be a person who's not into the quote unquote talk, the talking heads, the slogans. You seem to be a candidate that's very seriously want to get the job done. So they stopped you from getting the job done because everybody knows politics is an incredible blood sport. So they scandalize you.
And that's the playbook, Darvo. They distract and deny, they attacked, and they reverse the victim and offender. They want the victim to appear as the one causing the offense. And as Malcolm X teaches, when you see two people arguing, it's hard to tell which one is the fool. And then when you have the media taking a side, picking a side where they vilify the person that is actually correct, the whole dynamic changes. So this is where, outlets and platforms like yours are important to take a deeper dive into issues so that people can truly examine truth. They can get at it and confront all of the warts, lumps, and thorns that come with the truth. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have the change, and you're not going to have the smooth street, you're not going to have the safe street unless you are willing to confront the fact that we need police and we need to support them in different ways. And when you look very carefully at the movement to defund the police, and you see examples of where the police were defunded, you see a sharp increase in crime. So you shouldn't be surprised that you have this ill-advised movement about defunding the police. It should be about, let's invest in the police, let's invest in the community. You can do both at the same time.
Or let's not fund our police to be warriors. Let's not fund the police to be insured and to gain militarized equipment against people who don't have it. Let's fund the police for more community involvement, more mental health, more things that would get more of a better public relations with police, where they, when I was in elementary school, we had this big auditorium, and it was, your local police. And oh, yes, the police are your friends. And whenever you're in trouble, you call them and you dial them and you tell them, because they're here to help you. To the point where when you become a black man and you become a teenager, the police go from your friend to now your greatest enemy. Let's defund that part. Yes.
And this is where, management becomes the problem, because when you have bad supervisors, bad managers, and you have a system that is designed to arrest and is designed to oppress people into making plea deals, let's just say, you definitely need better managers on how to, engage that system. So the way I see it is a better investment in police officers, be it school police, youth officers, becoming more like role models is very important. And I do believe that those role model officers should have training for, engaging people with emotional disturbances, mental health challenges, but they also need backup. We can't send them into a distress and they're stressed out that if they apply their training, they're going to get sued, they're going to get vilified in the papers, and they're going to lose everything that they work for, all because of a 15-second clip that's taken out of context.
Correct.
So I do believe that, we need to find the right mix of police with mental health experts that can take on some of the challenge, but we have to make those investments. And the way I see it is there's enough money to do both. We have the money, we have the programs. What we don't have is the right management, the right leadership. And as you pointed out, you have elected officials that are afraid to buck the system and to create those changes.
Now, so last time we talked to you, you were running for public office again.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that right after we take this break. We'll be back in with the former mayor of Mount Vernon, Mayor Thomas, and we'll be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. Maybe able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
Welcome back. We're with our guest, former Mayor of Mount Vernon, Mayor Thomas. Last time we talked, we discussed the structure of possibility of you running for office again. How's that going?
So it definitely hit a huge obstacle. We hit a pothole that blew out our tires. We hit a pothole in our campaign that was beyond our control, and we did everything in our power to avoid this pitfall. The pitfall was we were challenged by the Democratic Party and the machine. We were challenged in the petition process to validate our signatures. And when we went to court to validate our signatures, we were thrown out of court.
Whoa. We're talking about a COVID environment and no social interaction and content. So what position are you running?
So for those that are just, getting to know me, I was mayor, a lot of support, a lot of questions about how I lost the primary, a lot of issues with the Board of Elections. Seeing the situation unfold with COVID and all the problems that, local officials have, contributed to make COVID worse by doing haphazard shutdowns and blocking businesses from doing business to survive the pandemic, I said it was wise to go for the role of controller in my city, which basically helps facilitate the operations of Mount Vernon as the guardian of the city's finances.
You have a business background, correct?
I have an executive MBA in finance and organizational leadership from the Stern School of Business. I've completed studies at the Harvard Kennedy School, as well as London School of Economics, and got my undergraduate degree in economics at New York University. all
Oh.
on scholarship.
All right. So you're running for office in a COVID environment. You need in your city
Right.
300 signatures.
Correct. We needed 300 valid Democratic, enrolled voters' signatures, 300 signatures to get on the ballot. We collected over 1,000, and the machine essentially admitted that they worked, overdrive to invalidate over 750 of our signatures. And there are tricks that they apply. And I want to just, invoke the Georgia Republican oppression tactics that you hear about how in the South there's this effort to, only by Republicans now, to marginalize and take away voting rights from people. Here you have a Black community, you have Black leaders in the Democratic machine, and they worked to create a situation where my campaign had no choice but to go to court to try and validate our petition to get on the ballot.
All right. But all you have to do in going to court is supply witnesses that said that, yes, I live here. I'm a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat, and I signed the petition.
And, it's like one of those cartoons where you see the goalposts keep moving. That's what happened when we got into court. The goalposts moved. The judge said on, Monday, she wanted to hear the evidence and understand what was going on. And then when we got back there on Wednesday, she said, "Oh, I'm throwing your case out because you didn't submit any evidence, and I don't want to know what's going on."
Oh, whoa. First, who's the judge?
So the judge in our case was a woman by the name of the Honorable Mary Smith.
Black woman? White woman?
No, she is a white woman, and she did say something on the record that offended the witnesses that did show up to court to testify, and it offended me as well as a person that lives in Mount Vernon. But what I can tell you is, she said on the record, after she said she did not want to hear the evidence that she requested and that we were seeking to present, she said, "I don't care who becomes controller. I don't live in Mount Vernon, and I don't care about Mount Vernon."
Whoa.
So when you think about the statement, right, it's like, I don't care about what goes on in your community. Despite there being shootings almost every night, despite the finances are still, all messed up, despite that there's no fuel for our garbage trucks, police have to ration the gallons they use, and buying, materials for the city to operate on credit cards, personal credit cards at that. So it's a terrible situation. And the judge to say, "I don't care," to me shows you the extent of, the reach of those forces that don't want Mount Vernon to rise and the forces that want to keep Mount Vernon down. They're doing everything possible to make it impossible for Mount Vernon to improve.
Help me to understand this. Now, you go before the judge who says that, okay, I'm going to schedule a date where I can hear the evidence of your petition and your motion. You get there with witnesses, not
50
witnesses. So you get a whole lot of people to pack this courtroom. Now, she says, "Okay, I'm ready. I scheduled a date to hear the evidence." When you get there, she says, "I don't want to hear the evidence."
Exactly, verbatim. And you have people take off of work.
I don't care about your Black dumb city. I don't care about the crime that's going on there. I don't care that people are paying taxes without representation. I don't care if somebody's got this big ass visa paying all of your bills. I don't care about anything. All I care about is my little white town. Get out.
Yeah, basically that's what happened. That's what happened. And that's what the old guard wanted. They wanted to throw us out of court so that we had to now go into an appeal process. The appeal process is more expensive to litigate.
You can appeal just on her statement. You don't even have to appeal the facts. You could have just had it. You could have got a mistrial based on what she said. There's no way in the world that a public service would basically say, "I don't care."
And it gets better though, because the way New York's appeal process works is once they send it back downstairs, it typically goes back to the same judge. So now you're asking this same judge who already threw you out to change their spots. And, a leopard can't change their spots.
I'm talking about gassery. So now you appeal based upon the subject, and the person who gets to overrule the subject is the subject you're appealing on?
Yeah. So it's like, how can, that's the system that we have. And that's why a lot of people get discouraged, because you don't see the changes. You see this constant, fight. You see the fallout, you see the chaos, and then you wonder why nothing changes. Because good people do not want to subject themselves to this type of abuse. You see, for me, I guess God made me different. And I believe that God has put this in my path so that I can be a part of forcing real change. And I'm proud of the changes that I did make while I was mayor. And I'm proud of the fact of people.
Crime was down and employment was up, right?
Crime was way down, employment was up, property values are through the roof. And the key is, we were on the road to real independence as a Black community. We're not too far off that road, I believe, based on everything that's in front of us. While COVID has ravaged communities and economies, I do believe that there's a turnaround on the horizon. And I believe that the private sector can play a huge role in affecting that turnaround despite the toxic politics. I believe that people are paying more attention. I believe that people are going to participate more in government by voting. And I believe you're going to see this turnaround because people are realizing that, government is a large part of the problem that needs to be solved.
Okay, so the appeal process, that's expensive. Take it from a man who has experience being slandered politically and having to go through court. That is very expensive.
Expensive money-wise, spiritually, physically draining. But in our case, it just didn't make, financial sense to continue, which is what the political establishment was counting on.
Well, that's what they do. They bankrupt you.
Yeah, they were counting on us not being able to raise the $100,000 necessary to launch a successful appeal.
So, in terms of raising the money, have you considered GoFundMe?
We raised a substantial amount. We raised over $30,000, which would have got us through the first round of appeals. But when we started getting closer and closer to raising more monies, we realized that more appeals may be necessary because you have these esoteric rules in New York that call for more litigation. And that's where, our supporters basically said, there may be another path. Let's look at, these other options. And I'm okay with that because some of the candidates that are still in the race for controller are actually really good candidates that I worked with and candidates that I personally respect. I do believe that I would have been a more effective controller in really solving the problem, but I do believe that with the people that are running, there's an opportunity to still make change. So part of the problem we see is people won't stop fighting each other. So I'm choosing to not fight. I'm choosing to try and figure out how to help the other person fight to win for all of us. And that's where I'm hoping that my example of stepping back, letting go of power, let's say, shows people how much power we can have if we just choose to work together on an issue. And that's where I know there will be more success down the road if we just work together. And that's what I've put forward to the candidates that are running. Most of them have reached back out saying they want to work together on stuff. And let's see where it goes. I'm not afraid to follow someone else. And I believe that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that leadership requires followership. And right now, I'm more than ready, willing, and able to help support the next controller so that we don't have the problems that we have right now. And a lot of problems we have are basic problems that could be solved by a third grader.
Well, I'm a big fan and understanding that the problem with Black unity are the Blacks who don't want to unite.
That's right.
Well, Mayor Thomas, it's always a joy to have you on our show. We're going to have you back for an update. Now, if you got some time, we're going to talk about big lies in our federal government. And in fact, we're even going to talk about one of the biggest lies I've heard this year with the running of Giuliani's son.
Oh.
We're going to just, yes, we're going to dive into that right after this break. I'll see you all in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
Welcome back. We're talking about the big lie. Now, the big lie in politics is going on. Let's start with one of my favorites. Mayor Giuliani, his son, is now running for governor of New York. Now, he did a press conference. We're going to play that right now.
What makes you qualified for that?
Sure. Well, I'm the only candidate that spent parts of 5 different decades of my life in politics or public service.
How do you get 5 decades? How do you get 5 over with New York?
Parts of 5 decades. Let me clarify. I said parts of 5 decades in there. So if we go back through it, my father's first campaign was 1989, so we can do the math. I spent parts of 32 years in politics.
Okay. Now, this man says that he has the qualifications to be the governor of New York because he has 50 years of public service in his belt. Now, fact checkers came up and said, you got 50 years of public service. That's a little difficult when you're only 32. Talk about a big lie. Once again, Republicans lying to hold power. And the worst thing about it is that after that conference, he got a huge amount of campaign donors. With me is one of the hosts of the Three Wise Ones, none other than our very own Rabbi Seth Frisch. Rabbi, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much.
So the big lie in politics, is it anything new about that?
Well, this big lie it's at a higher level than I've experienced in a long time. But Vince, I'm older than you. So
no,
my memory is
no, you're not.
Let me pretend for a moment. Let me give you my own big lie. Okay. So I'd like to say I've seen it all. But then every week I come back and I say to myself, oh, that's new. I think I've seen it all.
Rabbi, every time I think that someone has reached the height of being a jackass, somebody comes up with a bigger amount of jackass.
Yeah. Look, my memory does not extend back to the founding of the American Republic. But what I understand from professors greater than I, there was some really dirty publishing back then between what we call the founding fathers, all types of things that they would say about each other and to each other. So what I want to say is, looking back on the arc of history, there's not a lot of new under the sun, as it says in the book of Ecclesiastes. But I will say this, in my own brief lifetime, however long or short it has been, I have never seen this level of vitriol, the lowest level of scraping the barrel, ad hominem attacks, and yes, blatant lies, lies that undercut the very ability of us as an American people, to elect, to vote for, to ascend to office, others, ourselves. I've never seen anything like it. This is just another big lie by the son of one of the biggest liars we have seen of late. So yeah, I used to think I've seen it all, but now I've seen something new.
Oh, well, let's see. Those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat its failures.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Let's look at the biggest big lie that caused the greatest amount of damage in our world's history. Nazi Germany. Before it was Nazi Germany, there was this little radical populist by the name of Adolf Hitler who started the campaign of the big lie.
Well, there were a number of big lies that he started, but he had his biggest opportunity sitting in a prison in the 1920s after a failed attempt to take over whatever the Reich was, whatever German Republic existed then. He tried to take it over. He was imprisoned. He wrote this Mein Kampf, and he promulgated, and I think you know this, he promulgated one of the biggest lies ever in history. And look what happened. And by the way, in case anyone possibly imagines this otherwise, he spelled out what he was going to do in Mein Kampf. He was very clear. He made very clear what he was going to do. Among other things, and I think you know this, Vince, he was going to eliminate mass death-wise anyone that wasn't pure Aryan, white Aryan national. He was going to eliminate them. He was never a liar about that.
Okay, so Donald Trump seems to be reading the book of Mein Kampf, and that was his whole political structure. But however, here is a very unknown fact. When he wrote the book Mein Kampf, do you know how he based that structure and system of casting of valuing lives from Aryans, et cetera, and down the line?
Oh, he was very clear. He used racial profiling.
American.
What's new under the sun?
System of casting from people of money who were the power structure at that time was the South. The South power structure were these big white landowners who had slaves. And in between the slave and the landowner, there was the slave master and his family. So everybody below that system, if you weren't on the bottom, you were okay.
Right. Well, listen, caste systems are nothing new, but let's look at the broader character. He used the language of race.
Yes.
Now, people have, from time immemorial said, oh, Jews aren't a race. All right. People said gypsies aren't a race. They've said homosexuals aren't a race. Really, everyone has said it all. Okay, that's fine. I don't agree with all of that. But I'll tell you one thing. He used the language of race. He used race for his purposes to kill people, to eliminate them. He is a racist. Now, others have come along and use his playbook because it was an effective playbook. It worked. They're using the same language and they're using the same playbook. Suppression, marginalization, division. Oh, ready for this one? Virus, vermin. Look at the playbook. When Donald Trump says they're not bringing their best across the border, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing this, but one of the things, they're bringing illness and virus. He puts language of race together with other words that separate people out divide them, marginalize them, and subdue them. And what's the end game, Vince? What's the end game? Look at what they say. Look at, by the way, look at what white nationalists say in this country. Look at what they say.
Well, yeah, the China virus.
Exactly. Okay, that's current events. Wait. That is current events. But let's think about it this way. What a white nationalist says is the Holocaust was a big lie. That's how they start out by saying. And then they say, but we should do it anyway to anyone who's not a white nationalist.
Whoa. Let's bring that to the day. The white nationalists are saying the January 6th insurrection was just a group of people acting like tourists. There weren't violence. Those people weren't screaming, "Hang Mike Pence." Those people didn't kill Capitol guards. Those people didn't cause all that trauma. I mean, we've got people in this country today that are still dealing with post-traumatic stress just on that.
Okay, and that is my point. Language is put to the service of nationalism, white racist nationalism. And what does white racist nationalism do? It separates, it marginalizes, it subdues, it accuses of virus, it brings up nooses, okay? The only populations in America affected by the nooses were Jews and people of color.
There you go.
Boom. I mean, what? Just read Mein Kampf.
Strange fruit, my friend. Strange fruit.
And you know what? For them, and I'm going to say this clearly, and here's my bias coming out. You may call it strange fruit. I call it for them low-hanging fruit. Because it is, all you have to do is read the playbook of separation, of marginalization, of illness, plague, vermin, subhuman, peoples of color, peoples of the Hebraic faiths, faith that is based on racial stereotyping, all under the rubric of racial language. When you use this, Vince, I'm going to tell you the truth. You and I know when people use that, the end game is that a lot of people get killed.
Yes.
All under the name of who's the higher race, who's the one entitled, who's the one who should be running the nation.
Oh, whoa. Let's see. So the founding of America is that we have that peaceful transference of power, better known as elections. So we now have the master, or in their mind, the master race, now looking at the structure of America, the right of everyone to vote. And since it did not turn out the way that they wanted to do, they decided to now change it by force. And they are now justified. They've only arrested a little over 600 of all of those thousands and thousands of insurrectionists. Now, one and a small one, Black Lives Matter rally. They've arrested over an average 900.
Okay, this is a case of separation and subjugation. Let's start out with what many of the people across the nation and leaders of certain political parties will say. These people, and they'll show pictures and videos of this, these people were peaceful tourists just wanting to walk into the people's house and see it. They show certain videos. They make certain selections. They use certain language. They have put language and the modern language of today, video, to the service of white nationalism. And if you need any proof of their objectives, let me bring it to you. Let me bring you my evidence. Scan the shirts of the people who are staffing that rally. Look, Camp Auschwitz. What more do you need to know? Staff. Or how about this one? 6 million were not enough shirts on enough of the people who are at the rally.
Whoa.
Read the signs.
Time savior, police lives matter flags, and and the greatest one of all, the Confederate flag.
Okay, this was the first time. Remember, I said I've seen it all before January 6th?
Yeah.
Okay, to see a Confederate flag marched around the sacred sanctuary of our republic for the first time in my life, let me tell you what that looks like to a Jew. That looks like taking the Nazi flag with its insignia. And you know what that means to any Jew, any person of color, any person of a gypsy faith, the Romanis, any person who's homosexual, any person who's lesbian. Let me tell you what that means to all of us. It means these people want to subdue us, separate us out, send us to ghettos, send us to the final solution, and kill us, and then tell the world, by the way, it never happened. And then tell the world, not maybe, but it definitely should happen. That's what the Confederate flag means. That's what the Nazi flag means. That was paraded around in the nation's capital, and it was horrifying to the Jewish people. And I suspect, I can't speak for the peoples of color of America, but for all of us, it was beyond acceptable. It was nothing less than the worst possible statement of these January 6th tourists coming into the people's house that they claim to be their own.
So no wonder the investigation, the independent study of the January 6th incident is on life support right now as it faces the Senate. So, here are the people who were the target of this mob, of this insurrection. They were about to be, their lives were at stake. Majority of 50 Republicans. Now we can't get 10 Republicans whose lives were at stake to get an investigation of how this happened and how we can make sure that it doesn't happen again. Does that make any sense, Rabbi?
Look, all you have to do is read 1984, the book. It's an old book. Most people from this generation have never even heard of it. Maybe they read it in high school, as an assigned reading. But in it, we discovered something called Newspeak. What's that? I'm sorry?
It was assigned reading in my elementary school.
Yeah, you know what? I have a feeling it's been banned by right-wing or, white nationalists in this country because it so clearly identifies their playbook. But let me tell you what it says. It says, those words we said, they don't mean those. They don't mean that. There's it says it clearly in the book, Newspeak, not to be confused with Newsweek, all right? Newspeak. It means, what was good was bad, and what was bad, it means good. Those people, those insurrection, this voter suppression, let me tell you what they call that. You want security in your elections, don't you? Now, who doesn't want security in their elections? So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put one voting booth in areas of Texas that are larger than the state of Delaware. All right. We're going to, and by the way, you better show up. Say it again.
Yeah, show up on time because it closes early.
Not only that, but don't you dare drink a bottle of water in that line, even though we've made those lines really long. Don't drink a bottle of water because to be refreshed. That's against the rules. Mm-hmm. To actually be able to stand for 4 hours in the Texas sun, the great state of Texas sun, 4 hours. If you drink a bottle of water, that's breaking the rules. So yes. What's voter suppression? I'm using this as an example of call it what it is, but use your new term. I call it voter suppression, but they call it ensuring the security of an election. That's what they call it.
They call it ensuring the power of white nationalism.
Okay. Again, what you see here is vocabulary put to the service of marginalization, separation, subjugation, and we know the end game. You just go read that copy of Mein Kampf that sat on the wall that no one read for 40 or 50 years. Go read that. They say it very clearly.
Somebody read it. It's become their playbook. Now, we're going to talk about some of the after effects of the big lie right after this break. Now, I've got Rabbi Seth Frisch. I'm Vincent Squire, and we'll be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. Maybe able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
Welcome back. Now, we're talking about the big lie, the topic of today. And with us is one of the stars of the Three Wise Men, Rabbi Seth Frisch. Now, if you guys thought that he got heated up before, wait until we bring on this subject. The big lie, some of the after effects. The Republican Party has now adopted the big lie as campaign slogans of changing, spinning, or as Mayor Richard Thomas said, one of the things that they do in a big lie is after they victimize somebody, they reverse it. And what they're doing, they now find a new victim. Case in point, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, she's one of our favorites, Vincent, don't you think?
Oh, she's at my top 10 list of people I like to see not get elected again. Yet she went from the situation now of apologizing to she attacked AOC, stood at her door, had almost gotten into a old-fashioned street fight with their aides, and now she produced another story and blames Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi enforcing mask wearing for people is like when Hitler forced the Jews to wear a gold star.
Okay. I'm not sure if I begin, Vincent, to talk about this, that I won't self-implode by talking about this.
That would definitely increase our ratings.
I'm sure it would. And so I'm going to start out as calmly as possible. I'm going to keep my fingers on my wrist to test my blood pressure when I respond to this. So here goes. To compare anything like this to what happened in the Shoah, the Holocaust, is at the height, not just of arrogance, not just of stupidity, but blasphemy. To compare what's going on in Congress in trying to ensure the health and safety of others by the wearing of a mask to what happened on the part of Hitler and his playbook and his carry-through, to the wiping out of half of the Jewish people in the world, first in ghettos, and then by virus, and then by transport to gas chambers, and then to burning in ovens. This is beyond acceptable and an affront to God-fearing gypsies and to LGBTQ that were also wiped out when discovered. It is an affront to the memory of all those sacred souls who perished in the Shoah and the Holocaust. I don't know if I could continue any further, as I said before, without endangering my blood pressure. This woman is saying unacceptable things. And beyond needing to apologize, we should begin investigations in the United States House of Representatives as to whether she's fit for office and should maintain her seat. That's what we should be doing right now.
Well, here's one of the big things that we have to take into account. When you got a white nationalist radical, you know what that does? That increases her campaign donations.
Yes. And who can resist? Who can resist all the money coming into her coffers? Well, I'll tell you who could resist. People with integrity, people with a conscience. Not just mature people that have the moral and ethical fiber in their backbones to say the right thing, to do the right thing, to be not only humane, but ready for this, Vincent, to be human. What she has said has crossed the line of humanity. She has invoked people who sought genocide and ultimately deicide. I speak as a man of both the people and a man of the cloth. You know that. Right. And the ultimate aim of the Hitler cabal and henchmen, henchwomen, because we had both. The ultimate aim, not just among human beings, but the ultimate aim was to kill God. That was the aim of these people. And anyone who adheres to their playbook or their terminology or any of their verbiage in comparison to what happened during those years from 1933 to 1945, anyone who adheres to that, who uses it, racial, religious, deicidic, it's a word I made up, but you know what it means, deicidic. Mm-hmm. Anyone who adheres to that is a virtual affront to humanity and to God and to anyone of any religion, of any place, of any people on this earth, an affront.
Well, here is another big lie. Wyoming senator just got outed to finding out that his wife that he just recently divorced, he got her pregnant when she was 14 and he was 18. Now, he did, therefore, because what we understand in her citing is that she didn't want an abortion, so he married her to quote unquote legalize this. But yet when they talked about him, he told the big lie that their relationship was like Romeo and Juliet.
Well, I'm sure William Shakespeare would have trouble with that analogy. And I think any decent, law-abiding, moral or ethical person would have trouble with the virtual affront to language, to literature, and to humanity. In my book, and I'm speaking again, Vincent, as someone who is a loyal American, a patriot even, someone who believes in America and knows with all of its deficiencies, there are just some things, Vincent, that are just blatantly immoral, unethical, and ready for this, illegal. What he did is statutory rape.
Thank you. Whoa. Let's go a little further. Now, I'm a parent. Now, here is one thing I tell you to happen. Anytime I see an 18-year-old man sniffing around my 14-year-old daughter, I beat the and blessed him that he would never look at an underage girl again.
Well, look, you're the father. And by the way, if this was her mother, I would say you're the mother. We have to protect our children because I think you and I both know there's a lot of sick people out there. Mm-hmm. And when I say sick, I'm not talking about with a common cold. I'm talking about what's up here. And so the first thing, I understand your instincts. I understand them. But when it comes to statutory rape, besides pumping a 12 gauge into someone's face, There are other things that can be done. You and I both know that, adhering to the law.
You can always use my technique because when there was this really old guy following around my teenage daughter, I took him to the trunk of my car and showed him the body bag and shovel.
Okay, you know what? And that was very good use of Exhibit A and B. But I'll tell you my Exhibit A, and that is to drag him by his neck down to the local police station.
No.
So then again, hold on. Then again, wait, listen to this. Listen to this. When I would bring him into the police station, I would be somewhat, let me use a term, suspicious. I would be suspicious that maybe at the police station, this particular person might be treated well. That would be my suspicion.
That particular person only gets treated well if he's a white man in a police station.
Understood where I was going.
They
Understood.
get to go to Burger King. Now, if you're black, then this is what happens to a black man accused, or even if a parent talks to him about statutory rape. First, what the police do is that they put you somewhere where somebody has been locked up for a very long time, who's almost twice your size and works out 4 times a day. And then you become his match.
Well, listen, Vince, we used to talk about back in the day the crime of driving while black. Remember how we used to talk about that?
It still happens, except for now, what happens to you when you're driving around black? You used to just get a big ticket and spend over $500 in court, or up to $2,000 now. But now what happens when you're driving while black? You get killed by a white cop.
Well, this is where I was going with that. Now, I said back in the day when you and I first met, must have been 50 or 60 years ago, using the Giuliani method of metrics. All right. So
open public service.
Exactly. So used to be driving while black. Guess what it is now in America currently? It's breathing while black. And this is a matter, again, of reading the Mein Kampf playbook.
Well,
marginalization, separation, subjugation, virus, walls, illness, ghettoization. Yeah, ghettoization. And then suddenly we're all looking at train tracks off to a concentration camp.
Here is the purpose of Mein Kampf. Now, the technique of separation, subjugization, categorizing, classing, casting, whatever you want to call, and verminizing, calling them disease and subhuman or not human. You know what it does? It desensitizes the humanity of them. And
I just call it plainly. I just use a plain word.
Once you desensitize, or you get people to consider another race or group of people as not human or less than human, it's easy for people to commit atrocities to them because they no longer have a level of humanity. They're no longer human. They're vermin. They're worse than some people treat pests. They are yours to deal with, to be judge, jury, and executioner of them. And you know what we find out in terms of the big thing that's been happening with all this violence going on, with all of this separation, with all of this divisiveness, with all of this superiority, with all this nationalism? What we find out is that it increases the level of violence. We've got right now, because of the situation that's happening overseas, we've got Jewish men being attacked because they're wearing a yarmulke, because of Trump saying the China virus. We've got Asian people being attacked on the street, because of the marginalization, because of the inhuman treatment of African Americans now. We have them being attacked, not by other people, but by police officers.
Yes, sir. And Vincent, the one word the compound word, if you will, that I can reduce this to is dehumanization.
There you go.
We know where dehumanization leads to. We've got all the textbooks, we've got all the writings, and we know who's reading those books.
People who still have the tattoos on their arms from dehumanization.
Yes, sir. It's incredible what we're witnessing today. It is literally incredible. And by the way, the other thing that you said, which reminded me, and maybe I'm wrong, help me out here. I think you were saying violence begets violence. That's what I think I heard you say. I'm not sure if you said it, but I'm telling you, as people perpetrate violence, it comes around, it comes back, and it gets worse.
Well,
it gets worse.
violence and the dehumanization of it is also a level of desensitizing, and there's a level that the victim goes through. So what they actually do is feeling low, less. Their self-conscious is now attacked, and they feel inferior. So what do they do to gain that back? More violence.
Right. Subjugation. Here's my question to you. And look, maybe I already know the answer. Maybe I don't. I often wonder when I see people reading literally the 20th century textbooks on dehumanization, I wonder, what are they seeking to gain? And then I think back to an earlier conversation we had on the Wise Ones. I think back, it may not be what they seek to gain, but what they fear to lose. And that is what I'm beginning to wonder right now. What are these people's, because it's not just one group, what are these people's fearing to lose?
Well, let's look at the now gerrymandering of our municipalities and changing the votes, and so that we now have or quote unquote gearing themselves for a Republican takeover. What are they gaining that they are afraid of losing? Power.
Yeah, power. But it's so interesting.
Here's the thing. It's power. The institution of white supremacy, okay, well, our political structure, white power breeds to white privilege.
Of course.
So that's why they get backed up. That's why they're getting a lot of campaign donors, because these people who are now increasing white power means an increase of white privilege. And what we've been finding out is that America is slowly starting to realize that the quote unquote white majority in terms of the world is really a minority. There are more people of color than they are people of white descent or European descent. So what they're finding out is that this world is getting smaller and smaller, and that their privilege is getting smaller and smaller, and they will do anything, as Mayor Richard Power.
You don't even have to go out to the world. You could go to America.
The municipality, they will do anything to keep their power. In fact, and we just talked to Mayor Thomas about Mount Vernon, and I'm sorry, and here it is, these black people are having black on black crime to keep their power. Yet the bigger power structure, the white people are having them fight each other so that it can keep them oppressed.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like they're keeping them divided in order to keep them down.
Correct.
Feeding the divisions. But I want to say this: at what point does any population begin to realize that their addiction to power is actually killing their humanity? At what point does that happen? We've seen it happen before in history. We've seen it after World War II. We've seen Germany coming to terms with their addiction to power, killing their humanity. We saw it. At what point in America are we going to see the reduction of racial terminologies, verbiage, categorization, subjugation? What point are we going to see the reduction of that in order that people can see the humanity of all of us in America? E pluribus unum. At what point does that happen?
Well, this is the point where it happens, where the people they supported to keep in power because they give them privileges, they see it happen when that power structure now turns on them. That's when it happens. Now, we're going to come back and find out and talk about some of the biggest side effects or aftermath of the big lie, including what's happening right now with the cyber ninjas in Arizona. I've got Rabbi Seth Frisch. I'm Vincent Squire. We're going to come back to what you got to say in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
So the big lie established by President Trump about the election being false and the election was rigged so that he could lose has now reared its ugly head again. After, of course, him and his gang of attorneys, or as we call them, the group that can't sue straight, lost just about every motion that they put into court. Now, the big lie has reared its ugly head in Maricopa County in Arizona, where now the big lie, because they have proof that what happened was the real ballots were stolen. They were shredded. They were fed to the nearby chicken farm in which the chickens were incinerated. And the ballots, which caused Trump to lose, you can tell that they were shipped in from Asia, because you can tell that because all of those ballots have traces of bamboo on it. Yes. So Maricopa County has now gotten the cyber ninjas to prove that, first of all, the machines were rigged that caused Trump to lose. Now, since that showed up and their investigation of the machines found no irregularities or nothing that would cause Donald Trump to lose under false pretenses, or it was rigged for him to lose, they have now decided to go after the ballots. 2.1 million ballots have been moved to a warehouse where individually they have them under forensic light to look for traces of bamboo. Rabbi, what do you think about this BS?
Well, I noticed that bamboo is typically associated with Asia. And I remember what Trump used to, I don't have to remember that far back, but I know that Trump said the flu was from a Chinese laboratory, Asian, and I think he even called it the Wuhan flu, some type of rubric.
The tongue flu.
Even better. And yet I noticed that the people they hired to examine these ballots are calling themselves ninjas, which is typically associated with Asianology. You know, Asianology, the study of Asian cause and effect. So I would say to you, using my ridiculous terminology, tongue in cheek, I would say to you that this is clearly a new racial slant on things. That is the type of terminology they're using, and I am now using back at them. And so I want to say to you, this is no new slant. This is the same old textbook, the same one that we mentioned in the earlier chapter of this episode today. This is the playbook of white nationalists who are frightened, yes, like little children. They are frightened of losing their pie, their slice of pie. They think any slice that goes to someone else is one that they will never have. And they are reacting like little children in their minds, but bullies, and yes, even fascists, because they are separating out, they are subjugating, they are reducing other human beings in language that suggests beyond racism, suggesting subhuman. How can we let those subhumans take over? So it must be a big lie. So let's, dear Vincent, let's send in the ninjas to take care of this.
Well,
they're going to show us. The ninjas are going to show us.
here is the incredible thing about that lie. After the audit, okay, and found no irregularities. After the cyber ninjas now investigated the machines, they found no irregularities. Now people believe that the ballots were shredded and fed to chickens. I mean, really, that's like my daughter when she cut her hair, right? She cut her hair, had a disaster. She had a diagonal bang, and I asked her what happened. You know what she said? She was reaching up, and the scissors fell and came down and cut her hair. That's absurd.
Okay.
Yet, this is costing the state of Arizona millions of dollars. Millions. Not only that, but the Board of Election, after this quote unquote private group examined the voting machines, you know what the Board of Election said?
The machines are out.
There you go.
Okay, so let me tell you how I see this. When I was in 5th grade, I showed up at my classroom without my assignment one day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I was in 4th grade. And the teacher said, "Where's your assignment?" And I said to her, "The dog ate it."
Oh no, did she give you the shock look?
No, that look never came out. She gave me this look. Can you bring me, she said, could you bring me the shreds, the remnant? Because the dog probably left something.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no. Like the chickens of today, the dog ate the whole thing. I'd have to bring in the fecal material, dear teacher, for the ninjas to examine what's in there.
Oh, you can't bring the fecal material of the chickens because the chickens were incinerated. Oh, by the way, the fact checkers did find out that there was a chicken farm that caught on fire.
Oh, so you know what I call that? Foul play. Now, when you recover, listen, when you recover from that, all right, I've got more than that, but I'm gonna leave that to the end. Right now, I'm just gonna tell you, these ninjas and those people that are marginalizing, they're separating, they're dehumanizing, and they're seeking to hold on to their power, what they've essentially done is they've cast the big lie into stone for those people who want to believe it, need to believe it, or do believe it. And all of this speaks to the fear of peoples of color, to people who have values other than what we know these ninjas have, people of the Jewish faith, people of the Islamic faith, people who have all colors of the rainbow, if you will. They are seeking to set us off on a path that is less than them.
Rabbi, I was exhausted with the big lie in Trump's second year. I was at the verge of depression during the beginning of this pandemic because of the big lie. The virus is going away. It's going away. We've only got 30 of them going to zero. I was insulted. My intelligence was insulted when he basically said that you do not have to wear a mask. Now, we're now going into months after Trump lost, and we're still engaging in the big lie. To quote you, Rabbi, how long do we have to continue with this BS? How long do we have to continue to hold our breath? How long do we have to wait to exhale? How long will it take for us to just stop listening to this, shut these people up, silence them so that we can move on with a better and productive life? How long do we continue to listen to this?
Well, I'll use something that I learned from you. I'll answer you. And I will tell you that there will come a time. I learned this from you, Vincent. And I've learned this from other professors and other teachers. How long? Until such a time that Americans, white and black in all colors, all shapes, all shades, all types, until we all learn. That's how long. Until we all learn that there is a certain class of privileged in this country who are not going to give it up. And they are going to, at our detriment, to our detriment, they are going to take away from us in order to keep themselves floating up here in the heaven of their own minds. There's going to come a time when all peoples realize that those people who wrote the book on Mein Kampf and studied it and read it and put it into effect, there's going to come a time when all peoples see that book for what it is, and they will act on it. And there will come a time of reckoning in this country when those who have had less privilege will have the privilege of being represented, unsuppressed, and freed, so that all of us can enjoy literally the fruits of the Constitution of the United States as envisioned not just by the founders, but by the middle of the 19th century or the last quarter of the 19th century, those who fought to make this country more equal for all. It has been a long struggle, but I guarantee you that someday all of us will realize the dream as envisioned by the middle to the last part of the 19th century of freedom and dignity and representation and non-marginalization. Everyone shall sit, as we understood from the prophets, under their own fig tree, under their own vineyard, and enjoy their families and their place in this world, breathing free, living free, the very dream of America that we have someday yet to realize. That's when.
And on that note, we're going to go to break. I'm Vincent Squire with my guest, Rabbi Seth Frisch from New Shoal of America. We'll be back. 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
We're back. Before going to the break, Rabbi Seth Frisch was discussing and saying that one of the biggest things is going to happen in terms of bringing about change in our country is that everybody to realize the actual injustice of it. And until people come to that term, we won't have change. Or as one woman said, when nothing changed, nothing changed. one of the things to bring about change and about racism came up recently with the 1619 Project, which was shut down, and then it was countered by Donald Trump as we don't need a 1619 project, we need a 1776 project, in which it was now not talking about the emergence of African Americans and their contribution to American history, growth, progress, and to where we are today, but basically now whitewashing, literally, the process of America and how it was brought to glory by those colonists. Now, next on the chopping block that we see a lot of politicians talking about, which is a subject that's very literally unknown: critical race theory. Critical race theory has been basically mischaracterized, villainized, and marginalized. Critical race theory is the actual understanding of colonization, that how they started out as the originals and how other races mixed in and changed it, bringing it into a caste theory of understanding. The critical race theory is also looking at the structure of power based upon race, the ability to oppress another race, not because of quote unquote deity, but because of the color of their skin or their national origin. Critical race theory is the understanding of how power has changed and how people in power look to stay in power. Rabbi, critical race theory in our schools, why are they attacking it?
I wish I had, look, obviously, I wish I had the answer to all the questions that we're posing to each other. And I don't really have the answer. I can look back on some of the things you said to give me clues, however. I'll give you an example. When we look back, let's say to antebellum South, and people were under attack there for the use of slavery. And they were said it's inhuman. And then they sought to explain, or perhaps to justify, if you will, the usage of slaves, both in the economy and in the society and in the culture. They used the Bible to explain this. And they would go back to the story of Noah and his children. And they'd say, look, Ham was clearly guilty of something. And all the children of Ham are cursed, and therefore that race is cursed. So you see some of the antecedents of this kind of viewpoint of the world using biblical terminology. How does that seep into our world today?
Well, let's look at this from the theory of Ham and being cursed by his father Moses. God turned it into a blessing. The lineage of Ham is actually where you find Jesus Christ.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to reorient you on one thing. His father wasn't Moses. It was
sorry, not Moses. I'm
Noah.
sorry, Noah.
Okay, because Moses is one of our favorites, so we've got to be a little careful.
Noah's one of my favorites too, although he did have a lot of post-traumatic stress. I mean, spending 40 days with a group of animals, that's a lot to clean up.
I think you're talking about Noah again. Noah spent the days. Moses only spent 40 days with God. I mean, that's a whole different, that's a different arena.
Yeah, it's a 40-day thing. But, oh, by the way, Wikipedia defines critical race theory or CRT, as an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine the laws as it intersects with the issues of race and challenge mainstream liberal approach to racial justice.
Well, look, it seeps into everything that we're dealing with today. I often wonder, and I look around at some of the people that are propagating a certain, let's say, a reaction formation. I'm sorry to use such a fancy dancy little term, but there's a lot of reaction formation to that, like, oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And when I talk about 1619, I say, look, that's when slavery and race become siblingized and into one and introduced to America. And let me say this, and I think this is pretty clear, without the slave caste, America would not have gone to where it went to. And America wouldn't be where it is today without slavery. Now, that's not speaking in positive about slavery.
America.
Right?
I mean, they built it, they financed it, and it was all done off of their backs.
Exactly. And so when I say that, and I get the reaction formation of what are you talking about? The Constitution is the beginning. I say no. Right now in America, and I'm sorry to be, economically minded, but right now in America, we are literally standing on the shoulders of a slavery system that built up America the way it was in the South and the way it was in the North, the banking system, the trading system, the industry, industrial growth, all fed by Southern cotton and, of course, tobacco and other things, and slave labor. That's why we have to go from 1776, that was made possible by everything from 1619 to that very day. Remember, the primary drafters of these documents, those with power who created 1776, primarily derived from the southern states from the 1619 date onwards, all the way up into the 1770s. Let's remember who these men were. Who were these white men? Whether they felt one way about slavery or another, they were slave owners. They were even slave justifiers. And yes, they were those who benefited tremendously from the slave industry of America. And let me add this to you. By the end of the Civil War.
You forgot one more point.
Yes, sir.
Some of them were fathers of slave babies.
Of course. That's why they used to say on Virginia plantations, for example, the Jefferson plantation, oh, those Negroes are awful white. Very light-skinned. Oh, they seem to be very light Negroes on the Jefferson plantation. Gee, I wonder how that happened. Sally Jennings and her family included. So, yes, they benefited from that, but let us go. And this is why 1619 is important here. Let us now go to New York and industry. That industry benefited directly from the slave system of the South. So don't tell me it was the South. Don't tell me that just because a New York congressman didn't own any slaves, he was invested in the industry that was a direct recipient of the slave caste South.
But he truly profited from it. And his family made generational wealth and gains off of the simple backbones of slavery.
Yes,
yet they will not, but yet why is it so difficult for them to acknowledge the truth?
That's one of those questions that I think you asked me at the beginning that I don't know, except to say, gee, I hate to give up my dollars or my power or my votes or my office to somebody other than me.
So the
zero-sum power. Zero-sum game, 100%.
Zero-sum game.
And by the way, add to that our biblical antecedents. If I'm going to continue to justify slave labor, aside from my pocket, if I'm going to justify it by the curse of Ham, that's in my consciousness. And I'm sorry to pretend like I'm a psychologist right now, but you know what? It's a lot easier to subjugate someone in terms of slavery if I have something so sacred to me in a document that my preachers and my teachers and my ministers before me tell me is completely understood and sanctioned by the very book that I and my culture, whatever that culture is, I and my culture believe came not only from my ancestors, but comes from God. That consciousness seeps into the economic paradigm.
Power wasn't therefore coming from God. That was the same lie Hitler said. Hitler said, God made you superhuman. You're the Aryans. These people are saying, oh no, God made you white. And even in the book of Frederick Douglass, they were telling these slave masters that they had a God-given obligation to be slave masters and to torture these people because it wasn't them, it was God. It disappeared.
But understand this. This is the consciousness. This is the framework. Look, every picture has a framework. And we know we can change the framework if we change the frame. Look at the system of the South. Look at it. We've discussed it. Industry. The industry of the South was slave industry. But how much easier, and I'm being really light with my language here, how much easier is it to justify the slave industry if I immediately revert to the sacred books that tell me that they have to be slaves? They by right should be slaves because of the curses from thousands of years ago as envisioned by the sacred books of the testaments. That is an interpretation that comes and winds its way through history, and boom, it appears on our shores in 1619. And woe, this is what I say, woe to the person, woe to the preacher, woe to the man who thinks that everything starts in 1776 and doesn't start with the framework surrounding the first slave ship that arrives here with the first slaves in 1619. Woe to your humanity.
Okay, in terms of 1619 and slavery, let's look at this also. Globally, the chief economic or backbone of the chief economy during the 1600s was slavery. Globally, it wasn't just an American principle. However, when the rest of the world deemed it to be one, a dying art, and two, immoral, and they stopped the global slavery, in America, they kept it going. In terms of actual other societies, Rome, where quote unquote the American society was drafted and actually formulated or used as a model, Rome did have slaves. But slavery back then was an institution of, well, for a lot of them, it was an institution of apprenticeship where they worked for these people until they therefore came into power. Let's look at the actual part of slavery before they started bringing Africans or Caribbeans into the United States to be the commodities of their wealth. Slavery at that point, where the rich landowners basically brought someone in from Europe to actually work as an apprenticeship, and after their term, they therefore were released. Even biblically, where Israel sold himself. I'm sorry, not Israel, his father. I'm sorry, Jacob.
Oh, Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob sold himself into slavery, a bondsman to his father-in-law, to the hand of his wife. Slavery was designed to be an institution of you basically paying your debt by manual labor. It was only in the United States of America where slavery became a system where it was slave for life.
Well, look, you and I have discussed this before.
Which was upheld in the United States Supreme Court, Dred Scott ruling.
Yeah. Well, you and I have discussed this before that, to imagine, if you see a slave as an instrument of your pocket, right, of your largesse, why would it be in your interest, not just to subjugate the slave, but to maltreat the slave? Why would it be in your interest to hurt the slave and bludgeon him and cut off his extremities? Why would it be in your interest to do so if you didn't also think, in addition to your pocket, if you didn't have that mindset that this was an inferior, a vermin people? Why would it be in your interest? That's a question I never understood about the American slave.
Is it in your interest? Let's look at some of the great theories of power and the writers. Tolstoy, Sun Tzu, Machiavelli. Once you basically once you basically physically dominate, then you dominate mentally and emotionally. You therefore treat them bad. You have them fight one against another so that they are focusing more on themselves than focusing on you. Why? Because they outnumber you. And you get them to fight amongst themselves.
Well, I think the British used to call that divide and conquer. I believe that was a colonial system. Yeah.
Correct. And the same thing in American slavery. That book was called the Willie Lynch Letters, where the same principle was applied to treat cruelly and harshly, to oppress them. And you know what? In fact, African Americans have been oppressed so much to hearing the master's call that even when the master doesn't call them, they show up.
Well, it never surprised me, but it always raised my eyes that after 1863 and then 1865 and then Juneteenth, when people found out in America that they were free, it didn't surprise me, but I raised my eyes to the idea that a lot of Black people in America didn't move off the plantation. And they didn't move far emotionally from the plantation from the 1860s all the way to the 1960s.
We're in 2021. Emotionally, there's a lot of them still on the plantation. But let's get back to critical race theory in terms of race and injustice. Do you think, now, keep in mind, full disclosure on you.
Yeah, full disclosure, go ahead.
Philadelphia Defenders.
Say it again?
You work for the Philadelphia Defenders.
I do. You shouldn't out me like that, but that's okay. Go ahead.
One of the things in which you do is investigate crimes. Oh, by the way, congratulations to the district attorney for winning the primary. I think that he is doing an excellent job.
He is. He is.
One of the things that he's doing is working with the Philadelphia Defenders and the Justice Project.
Yes. Yeah, the Innocent Project.
Innocent Project, in which they're evaluating old cases and exonerating people. Now, to find that because of their color, they were treated unfairly in court. Some of them giving life sentence. In fact, Friday, they came up with a man who got the death penalty, and DNA proved that he wasn't there.
Mm. And did you hear the judge after he was interviewed when he was told that the DNA exonerated him? Do you hear what the judge said?
No.
The judge said, it's all on video and it's all out in public domain now. He said it was still the right decision, that the jury, the justice system, the jury found him guilty. There was no need to look at the DNA, even though he was approached about the DNA well before the execution. There was no need because the justice system had acted correctly and justice was served. Why bring up DNA, even when it was showed that the man was not guilty?
Oh, so what we're saying again is, oh, wait a minute. Why believe the truth when we've already told you what the truth is?
Why indeed? Or as you would say, how long?
Oh, okay. Let's take that back. Let's go back into some other things. Why do we need to know the truth about January the 6th? We all know what happened. It was just a group of tourists. Why do we need to know the truth about race in America when we've already told you why Black people are oppressed? Because they're shiftless, lazy, ignorant, and they're good for nothing. Why do we need to know the truth about Nazi Germany and how unfair the Jews were treated? Why? Because they're shiftless, lazy, and they deserve everything that happened to them. Why do we know the truth? You want to know the truth? What are you going to do with the truth, huh? You going to believe me or your lying eyes?
Okay, I'm going to answer that very clearly. The reason I'm going to lie about that, and I'm going to get everyone to believe me, the reason I'm going to cling to this lie is because if I don't, then I will lose part of what is mine right now. I will lose my privilege. I will lose my place. I will lose my country club membership. I will lose money on the value of my home. I will lose my standing when I walk into a supermarket and I want to be served first. I will lose the ability of, when I'm stopped by a policeman, to be let go with a little pat on the shoulder. I will lose all privilege, and I don't want to lose that privilege. You want to know why? Because if I lose that privilege, I lose emotional stature of my own in this world, and therefore I cannot give it up. That is why. That is why, dear Vincent.
That is why they're rejecting criminal race theory. Correct. The understanding of the misjustices to people according to their race. The understanding of not only that, not only misjustice in terms of our criminal justice system, but misjustice in terms of financial. Do you know that, and this happened to me. Now, I've had a house, 5,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms, 7 baths, basement, gourmet kitchen. Updated all the fixtures to sell the house. Do you know that when the first appraisal came in and saw pictures of me and my family in this house, that it was appraised 30% less than my neighbor who didn't have as much or as large as a house?
Well, Vincent, I think we can answer that with a very easy statement. You are guilty of breathing while Black. That was the problem. You're the guilty of doing anything by Black. And that is the nature today. This is the very issue with critical race theory, that you are going to be seen, your picture is going to be framed by everything that has come before it. That's a fact of current American history. This is what we're all fighting to dismantle. And why? We're fighting to dismantle this because an injustice to you on the basis of your skin color is an injustice to me on the basis of other criteria of my life. You know what Bishop Niemöller said back in the 1930s. First, they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I said nothing because I'm not a Catholic. And then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing because I'm not a Jew. But one day they came for me, and there was no one to speak for me. And you know what happened afterwards to Bishop Niemöller and to many peoples. This is the very injustice of it all. And an injustice to you is an injustice to me.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a break. I'm with our Rabbi, Seth Frisch, from New Shoal of America. I'm Vincent Squire, and we'll be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Into small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
All right, I'm here with Seth Frisch, Rabbi of New Shoal of America. Rabbi, tell us about your congregation.
Well, I like to say that we are the best congregation in the world. That's what I like to say. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's a lot of other really great congregations. It's just the one that I am looking at right now, Foursquare. And what I mean by that is when COVID-19 came along, we went from a small group of 75 families and we expanded to 300 members. Why? Because all of a sudden, Zoom put us in contact with people all over the country, all over the world. And we were able to, in our gatherings, increase the amount of people who came and shared with each other. So we are a disparate group. I don't mean to say it disparate, but we're many. We're of the Jewish faith. We're of other faiths. We are respectful of each other and each other's differences. And that's why we call it the New Shoal of America, as opposed to a shul that you might have known from before. So we call ourselves new.
Great. I understand that you're starting to get well recognized in the city of Philadelphia and surrounding areas.
Yes, that's a little shocking, by the way. So I'm walking down the street and I decided as I was walking outside, I thought, you know what? I'm going to take my mask off because I just heard from the CDC that you could walk around with your mask off. Okay, I take it off. I'm walking literally next to Sansom Street in Center City, and someone looks at me and says, "Oh, look, there's the white rabbi." So I've been recognized. I've finally been recognized for, in a new way.
Well, on your show, is there a black rabbi? I'm just curious.
No, but yeah, who knows? Look, Vincent, I'm very fond of saying, I may appear white and to all racial characterizations, I am, but I also feel that I'm a person of color, both from my antecedents thousands of years ago. I think we all know that if you know anything about Jesus, he was a Jew and he was hardly a white man. So look, history has done to me what happened to the black man and black women specifically in American history.
Well,
Throughout the European, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Rabbi, we're out of time.
Okay.
What? I want to thank you for joining us on our show today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, Vincent. And I'm always happy to be with you as a man of faith, as a rabbi of color, and as a colleague of yours. So thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. For those of you watching, thank you. We'll be back tomorrow. But what I'd like to say in closing is this. The big lie has always been going on throughout our history. But as the Bible says, darkness and light cannot share the same space. One will always overpower the other. Let us overpower the darkness of the big lie with light, the truth. Let us be fearless in speaking truth to power. And let us remember that it's always more of us than them. Let us stop being divided by these little small issues, yet stand united for what's fundamentally right, not just for our race and our group, but for all Americans. I'm a proud American, proud when I served in the military, proud when I walk down the street. But what I am not proud of is the consistent injustice of other people based upon their skin color. And I believe that Martin Luther King is right in his dream. And I look forward to the day where